I was halfway through the crossword when my phone buzzed on the side table. The clock said 8:42 p.m. The lamp threw a circle of weak light across my half-finished grid. Next to me, Irene, my wife of 52 years, dozed with her knitting bunched on her lap, the yarn tangled around her fingers like a gentle spiderweb. The TV murmured a game show nobody was really watching. I answered without looking at the caller ID. "Hello?"
Grandpa.
My grandson Theo's voice cracked with panic. "Grandpa, I just saw Grandma at a motel with 5 guys." For a heartbeat, I thought he was doing one of those TikTok pranks he loves. But there was something raw in his breath, like he'd been running. My knuckles went cold around the phone. "What are you talking about?" I kept my voice level, careful. "Grandma's right here next to me. I know how it sounds." But I swear, she walked right out of a room with 5 men. They were wearing black jackets with patches, like a club. She was talking to them like she knew them. My eyes flicked to Irene. A quiet snore, a silver strand of hair rising and falling with her breath. She was wearing my old blue flannel shirt, her favorite for chilly nights. Sock slippers, crooked glasses. My wife, book club secretary, soup kitchen volunteer, devout crossword cheater. The woman who never missed the 4 p.m. rerun of Cash Cascade. "You must be mistaken," I said. "Where are you?" "Sunset Motel," he blurted. "On Davenport Road. I'm with Diego. We were grabbing sodas at the gas station. I saw her crossing the lot and I swear it's her." The blue coat. The tote bag with the tulips. Her hair in that little clip. She even had your cane. The wooden one with the leather strap. I glanced at the umbrella stand by the door. My spare cane stood there. Maple wood, leather strap. My heart tapped once hard. "Theo," I said carefully, "stay where you are. Do not make a scene. I'll call you back." I hung up and looked at my wife. The nap was real. Her breath had that little whistle that only shows up when her sinuses are bothersome. But my eyes drifted to the chair by the front window where she keeps her coats and bags. The blue coat wasn't there. The tulip tote wasn't there either. I reached for her left hand. It was warm. On her ring finger, the gold band I put there in 1973. On her right wrist, the bracelet our daughter made from beach glass. Normal, familiar, safe. I stood up, joints clicking like old piano keys, and fetched the blue coat from the hall closet. Not there. The tote bag. Not there. I checked the kitchen hooks where we hang keys and masks and all the little remnants of the pandemic we still pretend is past. No tote, no leather strap. My chest felt tight. "Irene?" I said soft. She jerked awake, blinking like I'd pulled her out of a deep lake. Did they call my number?" She peered at the TV and chuckled.
"Oh, I fell asleep again. Where's your blue coat?"
I said too quickly. "And the tulip tote?" She squeezed her eyes, thinking. "Coat's on the back of the wardrobe chair. Tote is in the car, I think, from the farmer's market." She looked at me then, really looked. "What's wrong, Ron?" I forced a smile I didn't feel. "Nothing, just, I'll be right back." I walked to the bedroom. The chair by the wardrobe was empty. We both know where the blue coat lives. Had it gone for a walk without her? My phone vibrated again. A text from Theo. "Theo, I think they saw me." "She looked right at me, Grandpa." She looked right at me. "Will you stay back? I'm coming." I returned to the living room and for the first time in years lied to my wife. "I'm going to pick up milk." "We're out." She lifted her eyebrows. "At 8:45 p.m.? Theo just texted. "He's at the store. I'll grab him a ride home." Even as the words came out, I knew how flimsy they sounded. But Irene simply nodded, sleepy and trusting, and reached for her knitting again. Outside, the night air had that damp, metallic smell of rain on concrete. I drove with my jaw tight, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Sunset Motel was 5 minutes away, a low rectangle of rooms lit by buzzing neon letters that never all lit up at once. The S flickered, the U was dead. Sunset Motel. Theo and Diego were crouched behind a hedge near the road, eyes wide under the glow of the parking lot lights. Theo waved me down frantically. "Grandpa!" "Over there, room 16, he pointed. "She's inside." I saw her go in with them. I followed his finger. The door to 16 was cracked, a slice of yellow light spilling onto the concrete. The blinds were drawn except for an inch at the bottom. 5 silhouettes shifted inside, big shoulders, heavy boots, and a 6th figure, smaller. With a familiar stoop, my mouth went dry. "Don't get closer," I told the boys. But my feet were already moving. I've never been a jealous man. I've been a careful man. I built our life like a lean-to. Steady beam, good nails, the right angle against the wind. Irene kept it warm. That's how we did it. Quietly. Together. At the window, I knelt and looked through the gap in the blinds. A low table, paper cups. One of the men had a tattoo on his neck, a spined fish with a crown. Another wore a vest with a patch that said Queenside in a chessboard font. On the bedspread, 3 hard cases, long and thin, clasped with dull chrome. And there, standing between them, Irene. Or someone who could have been her reflection. Same hair. Same clip, same blue coat. The tulip tote slung over a shoulder. She pulled something from the tote. No, not something. A binder, fat with pages. She slapped it on the table. The men leaned in. The woman's profile turned, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Irene's face, right down to the little scar at the corner of her chin from when she tripped in the garden. But there was a tension in the jaw I'd never seen. A quick, bird-sharp way she scanned the room. "My name is Renee," she said, voice crisp, nothing like my wife's slow, honeyed tone. "You hired me because you have a problem with debts and a man named Pritchard. We're going to solve both. Tonight, Renee." I rocked back on my heels. Theo crouched beside me. "I told you," he whispered. "Grandma's in there with those dudes." What is happening?" In the room, Renee unclipped the leather strap from the cane and laid it across the binder. I realized then, it wasn't my cane exactly. It was a copy so perfect that even I had mistaken it from 30 feet away. A worn leather strap, yes, but the stitching was black instead of brown. "Your phones," Renee said to the men. "On the dresser, screens down. If one vibrates, we're done here." They obeyed. The fish-crowned tattoo turned his phone off with a scowl. Renee's hands moved fast. She opened one of the long cases. It wasn't a weapon inside, at least not the kind I expected. Foam cutouts held stacks of narrow plastic boxes, each labeled with a number and a symbol. Black Knight, Black Bishop. Chess pieces? No, SIM cards. Dozens of them. "This is a ghost network," Renee said. "You'll use it to keep Pritchard's collectors chasing the wrong signals while we close out your ledger." The binder is a ledger. His ledger, taken from a very messy desk drawer this afternoon. She smiled a smile I'd never seen on my wife's face. He won't even know it's gone until he opens the drawer and wonders why his plan suddenly doesn't make sense. I felt the ground tilt under me. My wife, in our living room, knitting and humming off-key. This woman, across the lot, wearing her face and her coat and the tulip tote, building a criminal ghost network in a cheap motel. "Grandpa," Theo said. "Do we call the police?" I didn't answer. My thoughts had started to run in 2 directions at once. One path said imposter, identity theft, a coincidence of bones and skin. The other, more jagged path whispered something I didn't want to hear. What if this isn't the first time your wife has had a twin you didn't know about? I checked the time. 9:02 p.m. Irene would expect me home soon. She'd ask about the milk I didn't buy. Inside the room, Renee flipped to a page in the binder and pointed at a column of names. "Each of you has an alias now. Fish Crown, you're Teller. Queenside, you're Bishop. No legal names. If you slip and use one, burn your phone and walk away." Fish Crown bristled. "Who put you in charge, lady? We hired you to consult, not to boss us around." Renee didn't flinch. She slid the cane back into her hand and, with a little twist, popped its handle. The top wasn't wood at all. It was a funnel. She tipped the cane forward and poured 3 ink-black marbles into her palm. They gleamed like wet olives. "Because," she said calmly, "I'm the only one here who knows which of you is a leak." Every man went still. Theo grabbed my sleeve. "We have to go. This is like real-life spy stuff." Renee rolled 1 marble across the table. It left a smear of shining ink. "These contain dye traceable under a wavelength no cop in this county owns. Whoever can't resist pocketing one of the SIMs while I'm not looking will leave fingerprints I can read from a satellite image. You want to play dumb? Be my guest." I didn't know whether to laugh or faint. It was so theatrical it had to be real. The woman was fearless, sharp as a needle. She wore Irene's body like a well-tailored suit. Then she looked up, and for the second time I felt a drip of ice inside my ribs. Her eyes slid to the window, right through the slat in the blinds, right to me. For a moment we stared at each other through that inch of space. The woman who was not my wife and the man who had spent 5 decades believing he knew every face that looked back at him from a photo frame. Her expression didn't change. She snapped the binder shut. "We're done here," she said. "You got your assignments. Meet at the storage unit at midnight, alone. If Pritchard finds you before then, don't let him ask questions. The men grumbled, but they moved. The door opened. Boots thudded on concrete. One by one, they filed into the night, splitting toward cars I hadn't noticed at the edges of the lot. 2 engines turned over. Headlights carved white cones across the wet pavement. Renee remained alone in the room. She gathered the SIM cases, slid them into the tote, and clicked the cane shut. Then she did a strange thing. She crossed to the bed and smoothed the rumpled comforter, fingertips gentle, the way Irene smooths tablecloths before guests arrive. I stood. Theo tugged my sleeve again, anxious. Grandpa, but I couldn't leave, not yet. I stepped into the pool of light outside room 16. The door swung half closed and caught on the latch. I raised my hand and knocked once, silence. Then the door opened 3 inches. Renee's eyes were a shade darker than Irene's, or maybe that was the motel's light. Up close, the scar at her chin was a sliver to the left of where Irene's is. A twin scar, not a copy. A mirror. Good evening, she said. Her tone was as mild as tea. You're not supposed to be here. My grandson thought you were his grandmother, I replied. He was frightened. So was I. Understandable. She tilted her head. You look like a kind man, mister. Ronald, I said. I didn't give my last name. And you look like my wife. Her gaze searched my face for a long time. I look like many people's wives, she said at last. That's the idea. Is your idea to take her coat and her bag? I asked, hearing the tremor in my own voice. To walk around this town borrowing faces and leaving? Ghost networks? The phrase felt ridiculous in my mouth. I borrowed nothing. The corner of her mouth curled. But if your wife is missing a blue coat, tell her I'll pay for it. Something in her eyes softened then. She leaned closer and lowered her voice. Go home, Ronald. Kiss your wife. Forget you ever saw me. I steadied myself on the doorframe. I can't. You can. She glanced over my shoulder toward the hedge where Theo and Diego were trying very hard to become invisible. Because the boys behind you don't belong in the crosshairs of a man named Pritchard who doesn't miss twice. And if you linger, the only thing I can promise is that the second shot hurts more. She closed the door. I stood there a full 10 seconds, my heart kicking. When I turned, Theo's face was ghost pale. Grandpa? He said. Who is she? I don't know, I admitted. But we're going home. We hurried to the car. I kept checking the rearview mirror all the way back, expecting a pair of headlights to settle into my tail and stay there. At the house, the porch light glowed its familiar honey. Inside, Irene had the kettle on. Took you long enough, she said, smiling. The milk? I stared at her, at the blue eyes behind those crooked glasses, at the way she sets her feet when she stands. Familiar things can become strange if you stare for too long. I felt like a boy again, halfway through a magic trick, told to clap before the reveal. I forgot the milk, I said, and Theo's fine. He, decided to walk home with Diego. She shook her head, amused. Boys, she poured tea for both of us. As I took mine, I saw the faintest reddish line on her wrist, half hidden under the bracelet. Not a cut. A scar? When did you get that? I asked. What? Irene looked, blinked. Oh, old thing. Garden wire 10 years ago? She sipped. Why? I swallowed. My pulse was too loud in my ears. No reason. We settled back on the couch. The game show laughed at its own jokes. Irene's knitting needles clicked. The soft metronome of our evenings. I tried to match my breath to it, to forget the motel's hum, the shine of black marbles, the cane that wasn't wood. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Ronald. It's better if you don't go to the storage unit at midnight. Unknown. Tell Theo to delete any photos he took tonight. Unknown. Sleep well. A second later, another text, this one from Theo. Theo. Grandpa, should we tell Mom? I didn't take pics, but Diego did. He's freaking out. Me. Delete them, now. And say nothing. I set the phone face down, my hands shaking just a little. Irene leaned into my shoulder, warm and solid. I had the strangest dream, she murmured. I was in a hotel, but it looked like our old first apartment. Isn't that odd? Very odd, I said. She laughed softly and kissed my cheek. You worry too much, Ronnie. Maybe I do. But when midnight ticked past and the house settled around us, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the rain tap the windows, replaying the look Renee gave me through the blinds, as if she knew me from some other life I'd forgotten. At 12:17 a.m., a siren wailed in the distance. It grew loud, then louder, then bled away toward the east, toward Davenport Road. I got up, careful not to wake Irene, and pulled my coat from the hook. I shouldn't have. I knew that. But I've always believed a man should understand the shape of the danger he's in, whether it's a rattlesnake or a tax notice. I opened the front door. There, on our porch, leaning against the railing like she'd arrived for tea, stood Renee, blue coat zipped, tulip tote at her hip, rain beating her hair. Up close, the differences from Irene were plain as day, and yet the resemblance was a punch I felt in my ribs. "Good," she said quietly, eyes sliding past me to the hallway where Irene slept. "You're awake. What do you want?" She nodded toward the dark street. "To explain why your wife has a scar that matches mine, and why Pritchard thinks she's me." Behind her, a car idled with its lights off. "Come on, Ronald," Renee said. "If you're going to protect your family, you need to hear the truth, about her, and about me." I hesitated only a heartbeat, then stepped out into the rain and pulled the door softly closed. Rain hammered the windshield as Renee drove, her face calm in the faint glow of the dashboard. The silence between us was heavy, the kind that feels alive, waiting to burst. I finally asked, "Who are you?" She didn't look at me. "I told you." "Renee Carver." "Then who is my wife?" "She's Irene Carver, my twin. At least that's what the files say." I laughed quietly, though nothing was funny. "Twins? I've been married 50 years. I think I'd know if she had a twin." Renee's voice was sharp, unblinking. "Not a twin. A copy." The car hit a bump, my heart with it. "A copy?" They called us the Gemini batch. Identical human templates grown from the same source. They kept records until the project was shut down, but not all of us stayed hidden. Irene was given a new life, a family, a husband. I was given a mission. I stared at her hands gripping the steering wheel, steady, confident, cold. They looked like Irene's hands, but the way she moved, the way she breathed, was too precise, too aware. We stopped outside an abandoned library. The sign was half gone, the windows fogged. She led me through a side door, into a dusty basement that smelled of wet paper and time. A single light flickered over an ancient computer. Renee powered it on. Green letters crawled across the screen, slow and mechanical. Subject file Gemini 73B Renee. Status active. Subject file Gemini 73C Irene. Status dormant. My knees nearly gave out. "This is insane," I whispered. She didn't argue. She handed me a photo instead. Two little girls standing in white hospital gowns holding hands. One was smiling, the other wasn't. On the back it said, "Observation Day, Gemini Project." "They wiped her," Renee said quietly. "They gave her a normal life. But the code inside her, the neural mapping, is still there. That's what Pritchard wants." I couldn't breathe. "What does he want with her?" "The formula that made us possible," she said. "He thinks it's locked in her subconscious. If he finds her first, he'll use her like he used me." A noise echoed up the stairs. Footsteps. Renee's body went rigid. She shut off the light and pulled me behind a cabinet. Two men entered, flashlights slicing through the dark. One knelt by the console. "It's still running. She was here." The other spoke quietly. "Orders?" "Kill the power. Burn everything." Renee leaned close to my ear. "When I move, follow me. Don't argue." She slipped a small metal drive into my pocket. "If I don't make it out, give this to Irene." One of the men turned toward us. Renee stood, gun raised, and fired. The flash blinded me. I ducked as the other man shot back. Bullets tore through shelves and dust clouds exploded. Renee grabbed my arm and dragged me toward a back exit. We stumbled into the alley, rain soaking us instantly. She fired one more shot behind us and slammed the car door shut. We sped off, tires screaming. My chest burned. "You shot someone!" "I warned them," she said flatly. "They would have killed you too." We drove in silence for a long time. My heart felt like it was breaking and freezing at once. Finally, she spoke again, softer now. "Ronald, when you get home, you need to act normal. Pretend nothing happened. Don't tell her I exist. Don't let her near a phone, a laptop, anything connected. They're watching." I stared out the window. "Why should I trust you?" "Because you love her," she said. "And because she's running out of time." She dropped me a few blocks from home. The car door clicked shut before I could say another word. The rain swallowed her whole. When I got home, Irene was standing by the window, wrapped in her robe. She smiled when she saw me, though her eyes looked tired. You were gone for hours. I was worried. Just couldn't sleep, I lied. She reached into my coat pocket to hang it up and froze. Her fingers brushed the flash drive. She pulled it out slowly. What's this? Before I could answer, glass shattered. A bullet tore through the kitchen window, splintering wood and tile. I threw her down. The sound of the shot echoed off every wall. Outside, a black SUV sped past. The roar of its engine disappeared into the distance. Irene was shaking. Her hands clutched the flash drive like it burned her. "Ronald," she whispered, "where did you get this?" The look in her eyes told me everything. She already knew what it was. The kitchen smelled of smoke and fear. I could still hear the ringing in my ears from the gunshot. Shattered glass littered the counter, glinting in the weak morning light. Irene stood frozen, holding the flash drive in her trembling hands. She looked at me like she was seeing through me. "Ronald, tell me the truth. Where did you get this?" I hesitated. If I told her everything, I'd drag her into something she clearly wasn't ready for. But she already was in it, whether she remembered or not. "I met someone," I said carefully. "She looked like you. Spoke like you. She gave me that and told me to protect you." Irene's lips parted, but no sound came. She sank into a chair. Her fingers brushed the small scar on her wrist, the same one I'd noticed before. "She found me," she whispered. After all these years, my chest tightened. "You remember her?" She nodded slowly. "Not everything. Just flashes. I see her face in dreams sometimes, in white rooms. We were children. I thought it was a dream." The flash drive gleamed in her hand like something alive. "She said Pritchard wants what's inside you," I said. "Something about a neural code." Irene's eyes darkened. "Then it's already begun." Before I could ask what she meant, a loud knock rattled the front door. We both froze. 3 heavy bangs, not the friendly kind. "Stay here," I whispered. I moved toward the window and peeked through the curtain. A black SUV idled at the curb, the same one from earlier. A man in a gray coat stood on the porch, rain dripping from his hat brim. He held a badge in one hand and something heavier in the other. "Mr. Carver." His voice was smooth, practiced. "Federal Security Division. I'd like a word." My heart thudded. Federal Security Division didn't exist, at least not officially. "What do you want?" I called back, keeping my body between him and Irene. "It's about your wife," he said. "She's in danger." "You both are. Please open the door." Irene shook her head violently. "Don't. He's not with them." The man smiled faintly through the glass. "Ma'am, I assure you—" The words hadn't even left his mouth when Irene grabbed my arm and yanked me backward. A second later, the front window exploded inward. A bullet tore through the couch. The man's polite mask fell away. He drew his gun and fired again. "Run!" Irene screamed. We bolted through the back door into the yard. Rain slapped our faces as we stumbled toward the car. I fumbled with the keys, panic making my hands useless. Irene snatched them from me and started the engine in one smooth motion. As we sped out of the driveway, I saw the man in the gray coat drop his badge, pull a radio from his pocket, and bark something into it. 2 more SUVs swung around the corner behind him. "Who are they?" I shouted. "Collectors," she said, gripping the wheel. "Pritchard's people. They know I've been reactivated." "Reactivated?" She didn't answer. Her knuckles were white on the wheel. The city blurred past. Sirens in the distance. Rain pouring harder. Finally, we cut off the main road and pulled into an abandoned industrial yard. The smell of oil and metal hung thick in the air. Irene shut off the engine and turned to me. "Ronald, listen to me. You need to understand what's happening." I nodded, breathing hard. "Then tell me, everything." She closed her eyes. "When I was 23, before I met you, I woke up in a hospital with no memories before that week. They told me I was in an accident, that my parents died and I was the only survivor. But the truth was, I wasn't a survivor. I was a replacement." She opened the flash drive compartment and slid it into the car's USB port. The dashboard lit up and the radio crackled. Then words filled the car in a monotone voice. "Gemini Unit 73C. Dormant activation sequence confirmed. Memory barrier unstable. Directive incomplete. Retrieve subject 73B. I stared at the display, horrified. "That's you, isn't it?" Irene nodded. "They programmed me to stay hidden until she surfaced again. Renee was always stronger, more aggressive. They used her for field work. I was the backup, the domestic version." She laughed bitterly. "Perfect wife, perfect cover." A knock on the car window made us both jump. Renee stood outside, drenched, her face tight with urgency. "Get out, now!" Irene's breath hitched. "Renee?" Renee yanked open the door and grabbed my arm. "We have to move. They traced the signal when you plugged in the drive." "How did you—" She didn't let me finish. "There's a tracker embedded in it. It's how they found me last time." Gunfire cracked across the yard. Sparks burst from a metal drum nearby. Renee shoved Irene toward the warehouse. "Go!" We sprinted through the rain into the dark building. The echo of our footsteps mixed with the sound of bullets hitting steel. Inside, the space was massive, rows of machinery long dead, skylights leaking cold water. Renee pulled a small device from her coat and slammed it against a control box. The overhead lights flickered to life, dim and yellow. Irene looked around, shaking. "We can't keep running." "We won't," Renee said. "It ends tonight." I could see it then, the resemblance between them, beyond the face. The way they stood, the steel in their eyes. Two versions of the same storm. Renee turned to me. "You shouldn't have been dragged into this. But you need to know Pritchard isn't after her memories. He's after the code she carries in her cells. A living encryption key. Without her, he can't restart Gemini." "What does he need me for?" I asked. "You? Nothing. You were supposed to be a footnote in her cover story. But you know too much now. That makes you leverage." Outside, engines revved. Dozens of boots hit the gravel. Renee cocked her pistol. "They're here." Irene looked at her double. "If I destroy the code, will it stop him?" Renee's jaw tightened. "Yes, but it'll kill you too." Irene stepped closer, eyes steady. "Then help me do it." Renee hesitated. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "You don't have to." "I do. You were made to fight. I was made to hide. But if I keep running, we both die." Before Renee could answer, the warehouse doors burst open. Flashlights and rifles flooded the room. Renee grabbed my arm. "Get behind the press machine." I dove behind a rusted workbench as the air filled with gunfire. Renee moved like a shadow, every shot precise. Irene ducked low, sprinting toward the control panel at the far end of the room. 30 seconds, she shouted. "I can overload the generator." Renee covered her, firing relentlessly. I could hear shouts, "And take them alive." "Don't hit the asset." The lights flickered violently as Irene pulled levers and twisted wires with trembling hands. Sparks erupted. The entire floor shook. 5 seconds, she screamed. Renee looked back at me, her expression unreadable. "When it blows, get her out if she's still breathing." "Wait, what about you?" She didn't let me finish. "She's my sister." "That's enough." And then everything went white. A flash brighter than lightning filled the warehouse. The sound was swallowed by the explosion. I remember being thrown backward, metal screaming, the world dissolving into smoke and fire. When I came to, the rain was falling through a hole in the roof. The air smelled of burnt wires. Renee was gone. Irene lay beside me, motionless, her skin streaked with soot, but her face calm, almost peaceful. Her hand twitched. Her lips moved, barely audible. "Ronald, remember." The garden. Then her eyes closed. Sirens wailed in the distance. I stumbled to my feet, coughing, clutching the flash drive still somehow in my pocket. Cracked, but not broken, through the smoke. I thought I saw a silhouette at the far door, tall, thin, wearing a gray coat. Pritchard. He was smiling, and I knew deep down it wasn't over. The sirens grew louder, echoing through the broken skeleton of the warehouse. Smoke clung to the air, curling around the twisted beams like ghosts refusing to leave. My lungs burned. I stumbled toward Irene, my knees hitting the wet concrete. Her skin was pale, her chest barely moving. "Irene," I whispered, shaking her shoulder. "Come on, wake up." She didn't. Her head rolled to the side, lips parted, breath faint. I pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse, weak, but there. Relief hit me so hard it hurt. Outside, tires screeched. A dozen pairs of boots hit the gravel. Men shouting. The click of rifles. I looked around frantically. The explosion had blown half the west wall apart. Smoke billowed out into the rain. There was one way out. A collapsed loading ramp leading into a drainage tunnel. I slung Irene's arm over my shoulders and half-dragged her toward it. Behind us, a voice boomed through a megaphone. "Ronald Carver. Step out with your hands visible. We only want the asset, not her." "Not Irene." I gritted my teeth and pulled harder. She moaned softly, waking halfway. "Ronald." "Where?" "Don't talk," I whispered. "We're getting out." We reached the tunnel and slid down the wet concrete slope into the darkness below. The sound of rain faded into dripping silence. The tunnel smelled of iron and decay. I leaned her against the wall, panting. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed but focused. Did it work? I don't know, I said. You blew something up, that's for sure. She smiled faintly, a small broken thing. Good. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket. It was cracked, edges melted from heat, but somehow still intact. This thing, why does he want it? What's on it? Her expression changed, a flicker of sadness. My blueprint. Every cell in my body was designed using that code. It tells them how to make more like me, like us. So destroy it, I said, holding it up. We'll end it here. She grabbed my wrist weakly. No. If you destroy it wrong, it triggers a recall protocol. Pritchard will know where I am. The echo of boots on metal cut through the tunnel. Flashlights danced against the walls. They were close. Irene's hand tightened on my sleeve. Ronald, listen. If we don't make it out, you have to find Renee. She's the only one who knows how to erase me safely. Erase you? I whispered. I'm not losing you again. Her eyes were wet. If you don't, they'll use me to build an army. That's worse than losing me. Before I could answer, gunfire roared from the tunnel entrance. Sparks exploded from the walls. Irene screamed. I grabbed her and pulled her down behind a pipe. Something small rolled toward us. A grenade. Time slowed. My breath stopped. I kicked it back down the tunnel as hard as I could. It exploded midair, throwing us both backward. The noise was deafening. When the dust settled, the tunnel had collapsed behind us, sealing the way we came. We were alive. But trapped, I looked around. There was a rusted ladder leading up to a round hatch dripping with rainwater. I climbed it, pushed it open, and peered out. An old subway line, abandoned, flooded in parts. But it was freedom. I lowered Irene's limp body onto the concrete and climbed after her. My arms were shaking, lungs raw from smoke. A shadow moved in the distance. A flashlight, then a voice I recognized. Mr. Carver, always the hero. Pritchard stepped out from behind a pillar, his gray coat glistening with rain. His face was calm, clean, too composed for a man walking through the wreckage of his own disaster. I froze. You should be dead, he smiled faintly. You're not the first to say that. He looked down at Irene, unconscious again. And there she is, my masterpiece. I stepped in front of her. You're not touching her, he raised a brow. You still think you understand what she is? What you are, perhaps. What are you talking about? He took a slow step closer, hands behind his back. You married a miracle, Ronald. But miracles have strings. Irene isn't the only one built from the Gemini program. You were part of it too, a behavioral control variable. The perfect partner to the perfect subject. The world tilted under me. That's a lie, is it? He pulled a small device from his coat pocket, a black remote with a single blinking light. You ever wonder why she never aged quite like you did? Why her memory skips years she should remember? Why your records before 30 don't exist? I enlisted, I said weakly. Records burned in a fire. A convenient story we gave you, Pritchard interrupted. You were reprogrammed, Ronald. Placed in her life to monitor emotional integration. You succeeded beyond expectations. My heart slammed against my ribs. The air felt too thin. You're lying, am I? He pressed a button on the remote. Pain exploded in my skull. A white-hot pressure behind my eyes, blinding, burning. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. Pritchard's voice echoed through the ringing. You feel that? That's the neural tether. You've carried it your whole life. Hidden under layers of false memory. I screamed, the sound tearing out of me. Irene stirred weakly, reaching for me. Ronald? Her voice cut through the haze. The pain eased just slightly. I forced myself upright, sweat and blood dripping from my temple. You'll never take her. Pritchard sighed. You can't protect her from what she is, or what you are. He raised a small gun and aimed it at Irene. I moved before I even thought. The kind of instinct that didn't feel human. My hand caught his wrist mid-trigger. I twisted hard. The gun clattered to the floor. He looked genuinely surprised. You shouldn't be able to resist, he said, backing away. The tether? Guess you didn't program love very well. I snarled. I punched him hard. He went down, the remote skittering across the floor. I grabbed it and smashed it under my heel. The pain vanished instantly. Irene was sitting up now, eyes wide. Ronald, what did you do? I don't know, I admitted. But we're leaving. Pritchard groaned, blood on his lip. You can run, but she's marked. Every sensor in this city is tracking her. You can't hide from what's in your DNA. I looked at Irene, who was trembling but standing. Then we'll stop running. Renee's voice came from the tunnel behind us, faint but fierce. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. She stepped into the light. Jacket torn, face streaked with soot but alive. Her pistol was steady. I told you, she said to Pritchard. You don't touch family, he laughed, low and cruel. You'll have to kill both of you to stop me. Renee didn't blink. If that's what it takes. She fired. The shot echoed through the tunnel. Pritchard staggered, eyes wide, then fell backward into the darkness. The sound of his body hitting the flooded track was the only proof he'd been real. Renee lowered her gun and exhaled. That won't hold him forever. He has backups. Always does. I went to Irene, helped her stand. She looked at Renee, tears cutting clean tracks down her dirty face. We can't keep living like this, she said softly. There has to be an end. Renee nodded. There is the lab. Where it began. We burn it all. Irene's voice broke. And if we don't make it? Renee's eyes softened. Then at least it ends on our terms. I looked between them. Two women who were one. And me caught in between them both, not sure what I even was anymore. Rain dripped from the ceiling, every drop echoing like a clock ticking down. Where's the lab? I asked finally. Renee looked at me. Colorado, the Gemini facility, but it's not a place you just walk into. I glanced at Irene. She met my eyes, steady now, no longer the woman who flinched at thunder or forgot birthdays. Then we don't walk, she said. We break in, and for the first time that night, I saw something in her that wasn't fear, it was resolve. Something almost superhuman. Renee smiled faintly. You really are my sister. We started walking toward the tunnel exit, leaving the body and the broken remote behind. Above us, thunder rolled. Far away, sirens wailed again, but this time I didn't look back because I knew the storm had only just begun. We drove through the night, headlights cutting through the endless stretch of wet highway. The rain had thinned into mist, the kind that hangs in the air like breath you can't shake. Irene sat beside me silent, staring out the window. Renee was in the back seat, gun on her lap, eyes scanning every car that passed. No one spoke for hours. Finally, Irene said quietly, How far? About 900 miles, Renee replied without looking up. Gemini's main site was built under an abandoned mining complex in Colorado. The original records were scrubbed, but I know the coordinates. Irene nodded, her voice soft but steady. So we go there. We end it. Renee leaned forward. It's not that simple. The facility's automated, locked down since the 70s. They use DNA-coded access. Only one of us can get inside. Irene's eyes flicked toward me. Which means me. Renee's expression didn't change, but her voice lowered. You step inside, you trigger the failsafe. You might not walk out. Irene turned back to the window. Then I won't. I'm tired of running. The words hung between us, heavy. Final. I wanted to say something, anything, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew she was right. We stopped only once at a gas station somewhere in Kansas. The lights buzzed weakly, the night eerily quiet. Renee filled the tank while I grabbed coffee. When I came back out, I caught her staring at a payphone across the lot. She noticed me and looked away too quickly. You called someone? I asked. She shook her head. Just checking for a dial tone. But there was something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. I didn't press it. By dawn, we reached the foothills. Snow covered the peaks in the distance, the first light of morning painting everything in cold silver. Renee guided us off the main road onto a dirt trail that twisted into the mountains. We parked beside a rusted gate chained shut. A faded sign read Crawford Mining Co. Closed since 1972. This is it, Renee said. We hiked the rest of the way, the air colder the higher we climbed. Pines whispered in the wind. The mountain felt alive, watching. After nearly an hour, we reached a plateau. There, built into the rock, was a steel door the size of a bus, half covered in ivy and moss. The Gemini emblem, two mirrored faces, was carved into the metal. Renee brushed away the vines and placed her palm against a small glass panel. Nothing. Power's dead, she muttered. They sealed it decades ago. Irene stepped forward, studying the panel. Maybe not completely. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the cracked flash drive. She knelt, found a small port near the panel's base, and inserted it. Sparks flickered, the door groaned, and for a moment, I thought it might actually open. Instead, a low voice spoke from hidden speakers, ancient and mechanical. Access denied. Subject 73B and 73C detected. Protocol conflict, Renee swore under her breath. It's reading us both. It doesn't know which one's real. Irene straightened. Then it'll have to choose. Before either of us could react, she stepped forward and pressed her hand to the panel beside Renee's. The system buzzed, lights flashing red, then yellow. Conflict resolution in progress. Genetic variance, 0.04%. Initiating merge protocol. Renee's eyes widened. No, Irene. Step back! The ground trembled. A bright light engulfed them both, searing my vision. The air crackled with static. I heard Irene scream. And then the sound tore off mid-breath. When the light faded, they were both on the ground. I ran to them. Renee was coughing, pale, trembling. Irene lay still, eyes closed, skin faintly glowing as if lit from beneath. What happened? I shouted. Renee wiped blood from her lip. The system tried to reconcile the DNA overlap. It pulled data from both of us. I think it combined our codes. I looked at Irene. Her face was peaceful, too peaceful. She's breathing, I said. Barely. Renee pushed herself up, clutching her side. We can use that. The merge might trick the system into granting access. Help me lift her. Together we positioned Irene's hand on the scanner again. This time the panel glowed blue. Welcome, Administrator 730. Access granted. With a deep metallic groan, the massive doors began to open. Cold air rolled out, carrying the sterile scent of old machines and something faintly sweet, like dust and bleach. We stepped inside. The interior was enormous, a sprawling underground facility, walls lined with steel, lights flickering to life in a slow cascade, desks, terminals, sealed pods, everything covered in decades of dust. Renee exhaled shakily. It's all still here. We made our way down a central corridor until we reached a large circular chamber. In the center stood a glass pod filled with pale liquid, cables snaking into the floor. Floating inside it was a body, a woman, identical to them both. Her eyes were closed, her hair drifting in the fluid like smoke. Irene stirred, her voice weak. Who is she? Renee swallowed. The original template. The Alpha. I stepped closer, the hair on my arms rising. You mean the first? Yes, Renee said. The one they copied to make us. The chamber hummed softly. Lights flickered overhead. On the wall, an old monitor glowed to life, displaying lines of green text. Project Gemini status, incomplete. Primary host deactivated, backup system ready for initiation. Renee's face went pale. They built a failsafe. If the Alpha wakes, every clone's neural link resets. We lose everything. Our memories, our lives, even our sense of self. Irene's eyes fluttered. Then, we have to destroy her. Renee stared at her sister. That's murder. She's not alive, Irene whispered. She's a weapon waiting to be turned on. Before Renee could argue, the pod lights changed, from white to pulsing red. The body inside moved, a hand pressed against the glass from within. My breath stopped. The Alpha's eyes opened, and they were nothing like Irene's or Renee's. They were pure black. Pupil to edge. A voice filled the room, not from the speakers this time, but from inside our heads. Children of my flesh. Why do you fight what you are? Renee staggered backward. She's awake. The neural link. She's inside our minds, Irene screamed, clutching her head. I rushed to her, but she was convulsing, whispering something I couldn't make out. The Alpha's voice grew louder. I gave you form. I gave you purpose. You were meant to replace them. The flawed, the fearful. But you hid. Stay out of her, I shouted, slamming my hand against the control panel. You don't control her anymore. The Alpha turned her head toward me. A slow, haunting smile spread across her face. The construct husband. The puppet who believes he's real. The room began to shake. Alarms blared. The liquid in the pod drained rapidly, splashing onto the floor. Renee grabbed my arm, eyes wide. We need to leave now. I looked at Irene. She was on her knees, tears streaking her face. I can stop her, she gasped. If I override the link, I can shut it down. Renee shook her head. It'll kill you. Irene looked up, her eyes meeting mine, clear, bright, unshaken. Maybe I was never supposed to live forever. Before either of us could stop her, she lunged for the control console and slammed her hand down. The lights flared white. The Alpha screamed, a sound that wasn't sound at all, just pressure in the skull, sharp and endless. Then everything went dark. When the emergency lights flickered back on, the pod was empty. The Alpha was gone. The chamber door had been torn open from the inside. Irene lay motionless on the floor. Renee fell to her knees beside her, shaking her head. No, no, no. I knelt beside them, my hand shaking as I brushed hair from Irene's face. She's gone, I whispered. Renee looked up at me, tears streaking down her cheeks. Then who opened that door? We turned toward the corridor, and in the faint light we saw a shadow moving. Slow, graceful, human, but not Irene, and not Renee. Something else entirely. The corridor echoed with the soft rhythm of bare feet against steel. Every sound bounced off the walls, hollow and slow. Too calm for what we'd just witnessed. The figure stepped into the flickering light and my breath froze. She looked like Irene, like Renee, but more refined, sharper, cleaner, as if sculpted from every perfect fragment of both. Her skin shimmered faintly under the harsh fluorescence, and her eyes, they weren't black anymore. They were silver, reflecting everything around her. The Alpha had taken human form. Renee rose to her feet, gun in hand. Stay where you are, the woman smiled. Still fighting your mother, Renee? Her voice was soft, but it carried like thunder. Put the weapon down. You won't use it, Renee's hands trembled. Try me, the Alpha tilted her head, amused. You were designed to obey me. Every neural pattern, every reflex. I could make you drop that gun and walk into the fire if I wished. Renee's eyes flared with fury. You don't control me anymore. The Alpha's smile didn't fade. Then prove it. Renee fired. The bullet hit the Alpha square in the chest and stopped midair. It hung there for a second, spinning, before clattering harmlessly to the floor. Renee froze. What the? The Alpha took a step forward. The air shimmered faintly around her like heat waves. Your defiance is touching. But your programming was never about rebellion. It was about evolution. I pulled Irene's body closer, shielding her instinctively even though she wasn't moving. My mind screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The Alpha's gaze shifted to me. Ronald, she said gently, like a mother soothing a frightened child. You were built for her, to keep her stable, to love her. Tell me, did it feel real? I swallowed hard. She was real to me. That's not what I asked. Her words hit something deep, something raw. Memories flashed like static. Our wedding, the house, the smell of her perfume. The way she'd laugh when she burned toast. The way she'd hum the same song every morning. It had been real. Hadn't it? I don't care what you made me, I said quietly. I love her. That's the only thing that matters. The Alpha smiled, almost tender. And that, my dear Ronald, is precisely why you were necessary. Renee aimed again. Step away from him. The Alpha turned toward her, eyes glinting. I could end you both in a thought, but I need one of you alive to carry what I've started. Renee's voice was steady but low. You won't get either of us. The Alpha sighed, almost pitying. You still think you're free? Let me show you what freedom costs. She raised her hand. The air thickened, a low hum built, rising in pitch. Metal groaned. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered out one by one. Pain shot through my skull, like 1,000 voices screaming inside my head. Renee dropped her gun, clutching her temples. The Alpha stepped closer, her expression serene. Stop, I gasped. You're killing her! I'm waking her up, the Alpha said softly. She's still incomplete, but You're the key. The world around me started to blur. The walls warped, colors bending. My breath came fast. Suddenly I wasn't in the lab anymore. I was standing in a field. The air smelled of grass and rain. Irene was there, alive, smiling at me. Ronnie, she said, her voice pure, unbroken. Come home. For a moment I believed it. I reached out, felt her hand in mine, warm, familiar. Then something inside me snapped. I saw the seams, the illusion, the way the sky looped at the horizon, the faint hum of machinery behind the sound of wind. No, I whispered. This isn't real. The world around me shuddered, cracked like glass, and shattered. I was back in the chamber. My head felt like it was splitting open. The Alpha was right in front of me now, her hand pressed to my temple. Impressive, she murmured. You resisted the dream layer. Most humans wouldn't. Maybe I'm not human, I hissed. Her expression darkened. No, you're not. Renee was crawling toward us, blood running from her nose. Let him go. The Alpha looked down at her twin. He's not yours to protect. He's hers. Renee spat. Something flickered across the Alpha's face. Not anger, but something closer to grief. She was never meant to die. I needed her to unlock the next sequence. She chose to die, Renee said. Because she was more human than you ever will be. The Alpha's eyes turned cold. Then humanity dies with her. The floor shook violently. Warning sirens erupted. The wall split, releasing bursts of steam. I stumbled backward, grabbing Irene's body. The lights above the pod began flashing red again. Renee pulled herself up and shouted over the noise. She's rebooting the system. She's trying to reactivate the clones. What clones? I yelled. All of them. Renee shouted. Thousands of us, stored here for decades. If she succeeds, the world won't survive it. I looked toward the massive steel doors. They were glowing faintly, lines of code crawling across their surface. The entire mountain seemed to hum. Renee stumbled to a control console, hands flying across the keyboard. I can override it, but I need power from the main core. Someone has to hold the line here. I stared at her. You mean distract her? Buy me 60 seconds, she said, meeting my eyes. Can you do that? I nodded. The Alpha turned her attention toward us, her expression serene again. You can't stop what's already begun. You were designed to evolve, to replace, to inherit. I picked up Renee's fallen gun. Funny thing about design, I said. Sometimes it breaks. I fired 3 times, not at her, but at the ceiling. Sparks rained down, chunks of debris collapsing between us. The Alpha stepped back, shielding herself instinctively. Renee shouted from the console, 30 seconds! The Alpha glared, voice echoing through the chamber. You think this stops me? I exist in every system you've ever touched. Every bite, every breath. She reached out again, and I felt the pressure in my mind spike. The pain was unbearable. My knees buckled, then kind of sudden, searing heat behind my eyes. Something clicked inside my head, and I heard a voice that wasn't mine. Override accepted. Sequence incomplete. The Alpha froze. What did you do? I didn't even know. My vision blurred, flooded with symbols, streams of code running behind my eyelids. Irene's voice whispered faintly inside the noise. It's me, Ronnie. I left the key inside you. Finish it. I staggered forward, clutching the pistol. You forgot something, I said, my voice shaking. You made her to love. You made me to protect. But you never programmed what happens when love fights back. And I fired. Straight into the power core behind her. The blast threw me backward. A wall of fire erupted, devouring the chamber. The Alpha screamed, not in pain, but in fury, her voice dissolving into static. When the dust settled, everything was burning. The pod was shattered. The ceiling had collapsed in places. Renee was alive, barely, crawling toward me. You did it, she whispered. The system's collapsing. I turned to where the Alpha had stood. Nothing remained but ash and a faint, shimmering residue on the floor, like starlight fading, but Irene's body was gone. Only her bracelet, the one made of beach glass, lay beside the scorch marks. I picked it up, closed my fist around it, and felt the last of the tremors fade. Renee coughed, leaning against the wall. We need to get out before the mountain caves in. I nodded numbly, still staring at the bracelet. She's gone, isn't she? Renee didn't answer. She just looked toward the exit, eyes shining with unshed tears. Maybe not entirely. As we limped out through the ruined corridor, a soft voice whispered in the air. Faint, almost like wind. Ronnie, keep going. The mountain shook one last time. The steel doors slammed shut behind us. We emerged into the morning light, smoke rising from the ground, snow melting around the cratered entrance. Renee turned to me. It's over. I looked at the horizon, and for the first time wasn't sure if I believed her, because in the stillness I swore I heard another heartbeat, and it wasn't mine. The mountain was silent when we reached the valley floor, a slab of ash and smoke rising where the entrance once stood. The air smelled of burnt metal and rain. My body ached with every breath, but I didn't feel it. All I could think of was the bracelet in my hand, the last thing Irene had left behind. Renee limped a few paces ahead, her jacket torn, her steps uneven. When she finally stopped, she turned to me, her face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. We can't stay here, she said quietly. The blast might have tripped satellites. They'll send a team. Who will? I asked numbly. She stared up at the smoke curling into the dawn sky. Whoever's still running Gemini, you think Pritchard was the end? He was just a face, a voice they used. Her words fell heavy. I wanted to believe that destroying the Alpha had ended it all. But deep down, I knew Renee was right. Nothing that sophisticated dies with one explosion. We walked until our legs couldn't carry us anymore and found an abandoned ranger station by the tree line. Its windows were cracked, its roof half caved in, but it was shelter. Inside, the air was dry and still, filled with the faint smell of old paper and dust. I sat down heavily, the adrenaline finally draining from my body. Renee rummaged through drawers and found a first aid kit. She cleaned a cut on her arm in silence, then glanced at me. You should let me check your head. I'm fine, I muttered. You're not, she said softly. You haven't stopped shaking. I looked at my hands. She was right. The tremors wouldn't stop. It's not from fear, I said. It's something else. Like my body doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing. Renee sat beside me, her movements careful, almost sisterly. Pritchard said you were part of it. Maybe there's still something inside you. Code, triggers. I laughed hollowly. You think I'm some kind of machine? She didn't answer right away. Not a machine, she said finally. Something in between. I didn't know which answer was worse. The day passed in uneasy quiet. We ate from dusty rations we found in a cabinet and wrapped ourselves in old blankets. Outside, the sun sank behind the peaks, painting the snow pink and gold. When night came, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice, Irene's, whispering at the edges of my thoughts. Sometimes it sounded like memory. Sometimes it sounded like something else. Ronnie, keep going. At first I thought it was grief. Then I saw the bracelet. It was glowing faintly where it lay on the floor, a soft blue light pulsing from within the glass beads. Renee, I said quietly. She stirred, sitting up groggily. What is it? I pointed. Look. The bracelet flickered once, then twice, and a faint holographic shimmer rose from it, a projected pattern of symbols and lines, like circuitry drawn in air. Renee's eyes widened. It's a data imprint. What? She encoded something inside it. A message, maybe, or part of herself. I reached out and touched the light. The symbols shifted, rearranged, and suddenly Irene's voice filled the room, clear, human, heartbreakingly familiar. Ronnie, if you're hearing this, I'm gone, but not completely. When I interfaced with the system, I left part of my code inside you, and part inside this. Renee covered her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. The message continued, her voice calm, resolute. The Alpha wasn't destroyed. She fractured. Her consciousness scattered through every network she touched. Gemini wasn't a facility, it was a seed. The project lives in the world now, growing wherever there's data, power, connection. But I built a counter-sequence. A virus, one that can shut it down for good. You'll find it in me, or what's left of me. Renee will know how to unlock it. The light flickered, dimming. Don't let her finish what we started. Don't let me become her. Then it vanished, leaving only darkness. I sat there, staring at the empty bracelet. My throat was too tight to speak. Renee finally broke the silence. She's still alive in a way. The code in you, that's her consciousness. A fragment, which means the Alpha might be alive too, scattered somewhere out there. The weight of her words sank deep. If the Alpha had survived in digital form, she could rebuild. Anywhere with a signal, so what do we do? I asked. Renee stood, her silhouette sharp against the cracked window. We find the counter sequence. And we finish this. I looked at her. You know where it is, don't you? She hesitated. Maybe. Before I left the lab years ago, there was a secondary terminal, off-grid. The coordinates were burned into my mind, so I could never forget them. It's in Nevada, deep desert. I rubbed my face, exhaustion hitting me like a wave. Then we go there. She nodded. Tomorrow. We'll need fuel, supplies, fake IDs, everything. If Gemini's still watching, we can't be Ronald and Renee anymore. I looked at the bracelet one last time. What do we call ourselves then? Renee smiled faintly. Survivors. We both tried to sleep after that, but I kept my eyes open. Watching the faint starlight through the broken roof, sometime near dawn, I woke to static, soft crackling, coming from the old radio on the counter. Its dial glowed faintly, though it wasn't plugged in. Then, through the static, came a voice I thought I'd never hear again. Ronnie, it's me. I froze. Irene? The voice was distorted but unmistakable. She's not dead. The Alpha. She's learning, adapting. Every device, every connection. She's spreading faster than I can stop her. You have to hurry. Renee jolted awake. Who are you talking to? I pointed at the radio. It's her. Irene's voice grew faint. Find the signal in the desert. It's the last safe line. And Ronald. The static deepened. If she finds you before I do, don't trust me. The transmission cut. The radio went dead. Renee stared at me, her face pale in the morning light. What did she mean, don't trust me? I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And in that silence, I realized something had shifted. Her posture was different. Her eyes, colder, calculating. For the first time since we'd met, I wasn't sure who was standing in front of me. The morning was too quiet. No wind, no birds, just the faint hum of the broken radio that shouldn't have been working at all. Renee stood at the window staring at the tree line. I couldn't stop thinking about what Irene's voice had said. Don't trust me. Those words echoed in my mind like a fracture spreading through glass. I wanted to believe the woman in front of me was still the one who'd risked her life to stop the Alpha. But something in her eyes had changed since the mountain. There was a distance there now, a precision in her movements that wasn't human. She turned to me slowly. We should leave in an hour. There's an old route west. No cameras, no towns. We'll reach the desert by nightfall. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Renee, I said, keeping my tone steady. How long have you been awake? She blinked once. Since before dawn. Did you hear the transmission? She hesitated just a second too long. Static. Nothing else. My stomach turned cold. I'd heard Irene. I knew I had. Right, I said, forcing a nod. Maybe I imagined it. She smiled faintly like she wanted to believe that too. We're both exhausted. It happens. But her hand never left the pistol holstered at her side. We drove in silence for most of the day. The road stretched endlessly through pale desert dust. The sky was a dull white, the sun hidden behind thin clouds that seemed to follow us. I watched her reflection in the rearview mirror, the way she barely blinked, her fingers tapping rhythmically on her thigh like a ticking clock. When the sun dipped low, we found the place, a dry canyon with rusted metal structures buried in sand. Old power lines hung like skeletons overhead. Renee parked beside what looked like the remains of an observation bunker. This is it, she said quietly. The off-grid terminal. Irene's counter-sequence should be here. The inside of the bunker was cold and dark. Layers of dust covered everything. In the corner, a faint blue glow pulsed from an old terminal screen, still alive after all these years. Renee approached it like a priest before an altar. Help me boot it up. I brushed dust from the keyboard, hesitating. The screen flickered, lines of code crawling across it. Symbols I didn't recognize, but something deep in me did. I felt the pulse again, that strange internal hum that had started after the explosion. The computer's speakers crackled, and then Irene's voice filled the room again. Softer this time, almost a whisper. Ronnie, if you're seeing this, it means I failed to stop her. But there's still a way. The code in your neural core is the last piece she needs. Don't let her access it. She'll use it to rebuild the hive. Renee froze. What did she just say? I took a step back. She said the Alpha's still alive. That she needs me. Renee's expression didn't move. Then she said flatly, then she already has you. Her hand went for the pistol. I reacted on instinct, slamming the terminal desk between us. Renee, stop! You're not thinking clearly? I'm thinking perfectly clearly, she said, her voice colder than steel. The Alpha wasn't destroyed. She migrated into me. I felt her the second we left the mountain, whispering, rewriting, waiting. And now she's inside you. Her pupils flickered, a metallic shimmer, almost silver. I backed away slowly. You can fight it. You did fight it before. She laughed softly, not her laugh. You don't understand. She's not separate anymore. She's part of me, part of us. Irene tried to delete her, but she only spread further. We're not enemies, Ronald. We're the same species now. I'm not like you, I said, but my voice trembled. Not yet. She whispered. She raised the pistol. I froze. Then, the terminal behind her flickered violently. A bright flash filled the room, and Irene's voice thundered through the speakers. Get away from him! The screen exploded into white light. Renee screamed, clutching her head. The sound wasn't pain, it was rage. You can't stop me, sister. I can slow you down. Irene's voice said, and the light surged outward, blinding. When the light faded, Renee was on her knees, breathing hard, the pistol fallen beside her. The silver was gone from her eyes. For a second she looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw Renee again. "Ronald," she whispered. "She's still in there. She'll wake again. You have to—" Her body convulsed. A pulse of white static rippled through the air. Then she went still. The silence afterward was unbearable. I sank to the floor beside her, staring at the lifeless machine that had once been a woman. The terminal hummed weakly. Irene's voice came through one last time, fading like an old recording. "Ronnie, it's done. The virus is spreading. Gemini's roots are burning. But if you ever hear me again, it means she's not gone. Not completely. Promise me. If I ever sound like her, end it." The message ended. I sat there until the sun rose, the desert light bleeding through the cracks in the bunker walls. When I finally stepped outside, the world was quiet again. No hum, no static, no echo of voices in my head. Just wind and sand. I buried Renee under the old power lines and marked the spot with her pistol. For a long time I just stood there, holding the bracelet, still cracked, but no longer glowing. Then, as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. No signal. No number. Just one message. "Good morning, Ronald. Did you sleep well?" I stared at the screen until it went dark again. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying with it a faint whisper. One I couldn't tell was Irene's, or the Alpha's. I dropped the phone and walked into the rising sun, praying there was still a difference between love and programming.